if you make electronic music, there's very likely a time where you've basically sat down to think of what it is you actually want to make, as you're trying to create something. And for some people it comes in quite naturally, where they have a specific vision for a sound they really want to make. For the genre I'm making, which is techno, there's a lot of artists that have very distinct, specific sound, both in what they make and both in what they produce. But then there are other artists where it's very much kind of eclectic in terms of what the inspirations are in their music, what the vibe is, what the style is, the emotion and the kind of aesthetic and structure of it, which you can kind of describe as many, many things. And I would say those two types of artists are, I don't know if they're the only way to go about this, but I would say those are the two main categories of artists. Ones that have a very distinct sound, they want to create, they know how to create, or they know what they're trying to aim towards. And then you have the other bucket, which is people that are creating, but it's much less restricted. It's much more free-flowing, is a lot more eclectic. So the inspirations are coming from different things. There is much less rigidity or specific direction in the external results of what actually you hear once the music is made. So where the conflict often happens is when you are in one bucket but you want to be in the other one, or you are in one of those buckets yourself and you're questioning whether that is the right bucket to be in. And I would say from my experience that both buckets are the right bucket to be in. It's the kind of beauty of electronic music and art in general, that there are really no rules when it comes down to this stuff. So really, as cliche and as silly as it might sound, it's genuinely just not worrying about it is really, really, kind of silly in a way to say it, to just not worry about it. But basically, the goal of making music is to make the best piece of music that you can in a way that you really like it. And in the very end, that's the only thing that really matters, because if you make something purely for yourself, that means you really like it. And because you know that you really like it, you also kind of guarantee that there is going to be someone out there who's also going to like it. Maybe not guarantee, maybe that's not the right way to put it. Maybe it's something around the trust, the consistency and the honesty of the music, having a standard that you are fully aware of, rather than trying to aim to make music aimed for someone that you don't really know what they like. So it doesn't mean that you can't make music for other people and be successful. Like a lot of pop music that you hear on the radio, a lot of it is kind of made in a lab where they know what works, they know what is trendy, they know what people want to hear, and they can reverse engineer a hit, produce it, give it for a specific artist, and then it comes out, and then with enough push underneath it to get it in front of people, it can kind of become a hit. But if we're talking about an underground niche subgenre of electronic music, which is whether it's techno, house, drum and bass, any other genres, if you're just an artist who is trying to navigate their path and trying to just make something then making something unique and your own is the goal. The goal is not to take an artist that has already created their own distinct sound and create a copy of it, because that's already been done by someone else and has been mastered by someone else. So all you're gonna get is just a worse version of something that's already been made. And there is a utility in that. So for the first couple stages of your journey as an artist and a music producer, copying something else is a great learning experience. So in a way, there is a stage where you do have to go through copying something else, because that what gives you the foundation of what you can build on top of later on. But later on, you want to refine your own path, both as an artist practically, but also as an artist kind of stylistically, and in the way that you express, in the way that you work, and what kind of music you create. So you want to refine and express yourself in that music uniquely, because it's your own uniqueness that is the thing that people are going to find interesting and unique. And especially with AI kind of creeping up on us pretty quickly in all industries, from graphic design to lawyering, doctoring, and now music and art. You know, there is going to be so much music that it's average music, which is the concoction of lots of different average sounds that then AI is able to reproduce more of. I think that is just even more fuel for you to consider that actually leaning into your own uniqueness, into your own weirdness, into your own musical voice, where you really like making music purely for yourself, is going to be even more important as time goes on. So if you are kind of worried around, should I be making music and just having fun with it and just making whatever I feel like, or whether you want to have a very specific vision, very specific sound, aesthetic, style that you want to just continue refining and following stylistically, both of them are fine. And also, there is a kind of conflict around, expressing yourself and being unique, that, all I'm saying in this as an artist is that you always want to create for yourself and express your uniqueness, but that can be expressed through a very narrow, specific style of music, or it can be expressed through a very broad, versatile, eclectic style of music. And the important part that is both of them are completely valid, and there is a lot of artists who have success with both ways. The issue only happens if you want to be the other bucket. And I think in terms of the pros and the cons, I think the second, I don't know, I can't remember which bucket that was, but the bucket in which you have a very narrow, specific vision of sound and style that you're trying to follow. So basically you sit down in the studio and you have, for example, like traditional, pure, deep techno is the thing that you want to make every single time. If you have this direction for your sound and you practically apply this to your creative sessions, where every time you sit down, you kind of aim in that direction, I think it might be a little bit more time efficient if you're trying to obviously release more music in that style. Because, if you only have 4, 8, 10 hours a week to work on your music, or however long, you are limited by how much time, how many tracks you can make. So narrowing down your direction, following that direction strictly, can kind of be more time efficient. But because basically you get more tracks that are within the bucket that you're trying to release, or you're trying to create or refine or get better at. The one consideration is that following that direction should be a direction of your creativity rather than a cage. So you don't want to put yourself in a box where you say, I only want to make this one specific sound, and you get down to the studio and you start working on your laptop, start making sounds, and then suddenly nothing is good enough because you have this like ideal or a specific sound that you're trying to follow, and then suddenly nothing is sounding good enough and you can't really make anything, and you get kind of distracted by what it could be and nothing feels good enough. And I think that is a trap of that kind of having a very specific sound. So you kind of want to have the direction of aiming in that direction, but then within that you want to be as creative, as free as possible, which means you can still have tracks that are maybe slightly different vibe, maybe slightly different arrangement, maybe slightly different elements, maybe it's the same vibe and the same stylistic choice, but some of them are a little bit more experimental, some of them are a little bit more DJ friendly and percussive and loopy. So you still want to have freedom within that, and otherwise you just get locked up and stuck by not having that freedom, by being too focused on this thing where it's just too rigid. You handcuff yourself creatively. And then the other bucket, which is kind of creating freely, of just whatever, maybe you're completely free. Maybe you make a dubstep track and a house track and then a techno track, and then, it's very, very different. I think if you're completely making different genres, I think it might be quite difficult, because it's hard to build a unique sound if you're blending different genres. But I think most people are more in the bracket of, I want to make a specific genre, but then within that genre my sounds are just very eclectic and strange and very different between each project. And I think that is maybe the bucket where you're a little bit less optimized in terms of the time that you put in, because let's say you might work for 6 months, but actually you only have like a third of the tracks in the very specific sound, and then maybe you have a third that are a little bit more bit different. Maybe one is like kind of dark and bleepy, and the other one's kind of funky and euphoric, and the third one is almost kind of like ambient and spacious and atmospheric. And then it might be a little bit more difficult to kind of narrow one specific sound if you are kind of spread thinner across it. But I would say for me, I've always been that bucket. I've always made lots of different sounds, and I've just kind of allowed myself to have fun with it, make whatever I felt. Some days it was a little bit more euphoric and melodic and emotional, and another time is a lot more driving and percussive and kind of stripped back. And I like them both, and I kind of would like both of those sounds to be what people recognize me for, because I like different styles of music and I make different styles of music, and each one of them is a piece that I really like. So why wouldn't I want to share it with other people? And I think it adds this extra safety blanket of creativity that it's much harder to get yourself stuck if you have complete freedom of just making whatever you feel like. And presumably at some stage, the optimal is kind of the middle, where you are able to nudge your direction in the direction that you want, but also have the creativity and freedom to make different sounds. So you can see kind of there's no hard rules with it. At the end of the day, it's just whatever music comes out of the speakers and people enjoying it. Really, the only thing that matters. So yeah, I think if you have thought about it and maybe haven't thought about it and you're just wondering where you are with it, have a think which bucket you're in, and have a think around, are you feeling restricted and stuck creatively because you're too rigid in what you're trying to make? Or maybe you have not enough structure, and maybe you're making almost completely different genres every session you sit down. Have a think around whether that is what you want, whether there is a way to either loosen up your creativity or give it more direction. And as long as you have fun along the way and you make music that you really like for yourself, I think that's the fundamental principle. And also having this less expectation of the external success being needed, because you shouldn't worry too much whether someone else is going to like the music, or whether it's going to get enough streams on it, or whether enough likes, or whether or whether a specific label likes it, because these are things that are outside of your control. The only things within your control are, do I like it? Do I really like it? Am I having fun as I'm making it? Because I need to have fun to make more of it. Because if I'm not having fun, then what's the point, really? Because make the best thing that you can, release it into the world, and from that point on, hands off the wheel, you've done your job. Whatever happens from that point on is just a bonus. And if the music is really good and you do it long enough, there are people who will take notice. They'll pay attention. They'll be like, oh, what's this music coming from this artist? And they'll dig a little bit deeper, and opportunities might come your way, whether it's from promoters, DJs, artists, or just people who like your music. And so just do those things, I guess. So go and make some music now.